Okay, for today, we are requesting a release of two audit reports. The first report that we're going to provide an overview over is the Office of Internal Audit's review of the SDS internal control. The SDS program of internal controls. That overview will be provided by Tom Park, our internal audit manager. And afterwards, we'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee members and board members may have. I do want to thank the SES staff for their cooperation during the review. They had a lot going on, but they always, found the time to answer our questions, and we do appreciate that. So we do appreciate the cooperation that we receive from the district staff.
The review or the report is in your packets. The objective of the review to see if the internal controls were appropriate and generally effective to handle the operations for the SES office. And the opinion of the internal audit board was the board that the controls were effective and appropriate to administer the program. So we didn't really have a problem with long run. We did come up with recommendations, and we did find some errors that we immediately brought to their attention in the invoice calculation. There was 10 report recommendations, and we covered in general the changing the monitoring program to a risk-based monitoring program. The providers are the tutor providers, and the SES office visits their offices to see how they operate. We recommended they utilize their manpower a little better by going to the higher risk on a more frequent basis and stratifying the work that way.
Well,
excuse me.
How often?
How often? They went there several times a year, but they covered all that way. So what we were recommending is to increase the frequency, and this is at all sites, not just at providers' site. Increase the frequency for the higher error rate ones, the ones that have more difficult processing invoices. So I do not know what they'll end up with, but they're going to alter their schedule. We agreed and thought it was a good idea.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clark. So your definition of, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Your definition of, I wrote down higher risk, those that had challenges.
Yes, how we broke that down is we looked at the difficulty that we had processing the invoice, meaning questions we had to go back to the provider for information or reject an item. So those that had the higher frequency of rejected invoices, we categorized as the higher risk providers. That's how we did that. We asked also that the three business managers, the SES department coordinators, get involved in the invoice review just for more knowledge. They can bring the business knowledge to the invoices and help out in that process. Again, to speed up the efficiency and business knowledge management. We asked them to create an invoice audit checklist which would allow consistency as they reviewed the invoices to make sure all the regular steps were performed, the important steps were performed. They weren't not being performed, say it that way. We just thought this would make it easier to ensure a consistent approach. We asked that the procedures, which they're continually updating as they find more efficient procedures, we asked that they do quick update to the written procedures when they change it rather than an annual update. So do the procedure updates more frequently. We asked that they restructure their filing system in conjunction with moving their offices and consolidating them into a single district office, which the restructuring was to get the files in a more friendly manner for their invoice review and retrieval of data. So that is some of the report. We did find a couple of errors and notified them about. They went back and corrected the cash when they found it. For example, we found an invoice for a student that was actually paid when the student said it was absent. The student was there, we paid $99 to that provider for that event. It was a big invoice and then got corrected. We had 7 other examples of that wasn't collected. So we did not have a high error rate in our samples. With that, I'd like to take your questions.
So what was the total monetary value of those findings?
Of the invoices that we were looking at?
Yeah.
We found that they were less than $500 of theirs. There's 7 documents inside the invoices. There were hundreds of documents inside these invoices. So, very low error rate. can give you the exact statistics if you want. I can provide them.
If you have them handy, that's fine.
We can get to that after.
That's fine, too.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Tom, first of all, I do agree that this is, once again, very good work. It is. And I think it certainly continues to be responsive to the situation that's going on. There's so much more questions about the last one. Has this been shared with the other staff? Do they have any comments on it? Do we know if they're going to incorporate this in their report? Or have any findings to clarify, expand,
They are looking more at the possible fraudulent acts from the vendors. So as far as doing this type of detailed internal control review, that was not what they were planning to do. They did look at this, and he did act, could, after it's been released, could they get a copy of it, which I said, of course they can. As far as any recommendations that they have as far as improving our processes, they will share, but they did not have any when I met with them. I think it might have been last week or the week before. They are, we have two sets of auditors from out of her state in here. And the ones that are doing the fraud investigation, I have asked them to, as soon as they can, to give us an update.
Okay, have both teams with the other case on been brought to them? Or just John and the general?
This was the fraud, the ones doing the fraud investigation. John was here last time, so he's up to date on that. And then I met with the other ones, the fraud examiners, the week after that, so they're up to date on this.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do we have any better clarity from the auditor's office in terms of timeline and how soon they will be wrapping up?
No.
And so we don't have a clear sense of how this might conflict or help the work that they're doing.
They didn't anticipate any conflicts, from this work here or from this report.
Going on, I think, would it not be advisable that we know that for sure before we comment? Again, all
of the recommendations that we made to management have been implemented. And when I met with the auditor, they looked at the report and I gave them access to our work papers and they didn't see anything that would conflict with what they're doing because of the nature of what they're doing is really looking at the vendors, and the nature of what we were doing was looking at the controls over is basically how we process invoices and trying to come up with recommendations to help the SCS program be more, efficient. If the committee wants to prefer, releasing.
I guess my concern is there's enough questions out there now. This is great to know. It is very good topics. Ultimately, it's up to the Board of Education, obviously, as to whether or not. the pieces dealt with individually, more comprehensive.
I mean, we are continually working with, SES.
And that's very appropriate.
I guess I'm not sure. I don't have a problem with releasing it personally. Whether we release it now or wait, would it change the report?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. That's
But if it's,
right.
but if this was an audit of internal controls, how would it change what we found and what we implemented?
Because somebody else's interpretation of the adequacy of the internal controls could differ in certain respects.
I definitely understand what you're saying, Mr. Davis. And everything, I can just go by what the auditor of state has shared with me, verbally. Everything that they have told us was that, it appears that the program operators are doing a reasonable effort to try to make sure that they're paying and monitoring appropriately. They're one of the few sites that go and do the unannounced visits to see what's actually going on during the tutoring sessions. So, once again, what they had shared with me was that they did not have any, they didn't see any, they didn't view the controls to be weak or to be of, the issue that they are running into is the actions of the vendors, of the providers.
I hear that, and that's great. I really don't want to overstep my bounds here.
Step away.
Volunteer.
It's not overstepping at all. Welcome your input and your questions.
I don't have any of the experience Mr. Davis has, but here's the thing that I can assure you, is that regardless of what's decided here, the recommendations, we're going forward with those. So that's happening. We're already, most of them are done. And so, and the other piece is, I think I have some limited understanding of what he's saying is, do you want two conflicting reports out there? Is that the question?
It is. I would hate to have that situation arise, but I also think that I, as a member, would like to know at the end which of the parties' views and that the position is consistent.
I do know we're trying to arrange, like I said, I'm trying to arrange another session with the Auditor of State to update the committee. And like I said, once again, they can, when they, come to update the committee, they can discuss, what's appropriate to discuss during an executive session, and if there's any conflict,
So that
we
would,
can bring that up at that time. And
so again, my suggestion, or whatever it would be, is that knowing that we have members from the other state on either of the projects that they have, because they will, they'll have an internal control assessment for the audit and financial statements, they'll have the private investigation, that you all consider this a work in progress. It's very good information, it really is, it's very diligent, and I think you have the assurance of Dr. Harris that this will go forward to implement.
how long do we wait?
So we're done.
That's not needed. Don't put that in the minutes. Obviously, a little more.
I mean, I just had a concern about an audit that's been ongoing for a long period of time.
That's not our problem, we didn't do it. Yeah, yeah.
This one.
We've been working very diligently. Yeah. I'm saying.
No, not it. No, Sure.
Bottom line in regards to this, whatever comes out, won't the community want to know what we're doing if correction action is needed? Wouldn't that be the most important thing throughout this process? Okay, we know there may or may not be challenges based on what comes out of the audit. But to me, it seems like the more important thing is this was then, and here we are now, and what actions are being employed to correct whatever. We've got the right controls in place, we're doing the right things in terms of, staying on top of this issue.
Actually, I'm not taking a view of the issue, I'm really just raising
Right.
questions. So, again, this is an issue for the Board of Education. The same questions I raised when meeting companies.
And just in response to your comments, Mrs. Parkins, as you said earlier, and Ms. Gross said, they're done. Most of them are done anyway. So there's no reason that we couldn't have a major public statement about what's happened next if that were of any concern.
I look at it very similar to how the Department of Education did their review a couple months ago. Even while the Auditor of State was doing their review, they tried to make sure that they didn't duplicate effort. And they recognized that the Auditor of State was looking into the fraudulent activity of the vendors. And they were looking at responding to some of the allegations that came from a community group. And I kind of view this as the same. I know the Auditor of State is looking at the fraud that may or may not have been perpetrated by some of the vendors, and we have been in communication with them to try to not to duplicate their effort. And once again, all I can share is what they shared with me was that they didn't see anything that we were saying at this point in time to be a conflict with what they were looking into. But they very well could have some recommendations when they're complete. And the other issue is they could not really give me a time frame when they were anticipating completing. What they wanted to do was to come in, try to arrange to have another executive session with the committee and bring you up to date. So if it will be if it's in the best interest of the board to wait until after that meeting, I'm open to do what the committee and the board wants. The recommendation for us, I think, one of the important things is that the recommendations are there and they're being implemented so the program can get stronger, become more efficient, regardless of, when this gets released.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, I would like to see what Carol talked about, is getting it out in the public so the public can see what we've done and what we've learned and what we've been doing to get it off the plate of the committee. I don't know, waiting for the auditor to take, like you said, how long that would take, and whether or not even another sit-down meeting with them would change anything, whether change anything inside the report I think is established. So from my standpoint, I personally don't see any reason why we can't go forward. That's just my 2 cents.
Other thoughts, questions, comments? Well, okay, if there are no other questions, I guess at this point I actually have to call for, I'm going to call for a motion for release of the report.
Well, personally, from a Robert's Rules of Order standpoint, she's already asked for a request of release of the audit. So I don't know that you necessarily need a motion. I just think at this point you need to decide whether or not you're going to do it. So that either you do that by vote or by consensus or however.
Yeah, we're going to be voting with motion.
I mean, I know as I said, once again, the recommendations are there, the district is going forward with, implementing the recommendations, and they have the means to do their monitoring business on a risk, basis. They know where their concerned providers are, and they're already implementing that. We have the Auditor State coming hopefully in December. Would it be in the best interest to just, once again, postpone releasing this until at least after the Auditor State comes and does an overview with the committee?
I guess what I'm struggling with is, and I'm not an auditor, so you'll have to excuse anything I say that's not audit friendly or that shows a gross lack of understanding. If we've done the work and we defend the work and we can stand behind the work, we may find out in the future that something is in conflict, but that's true of just about everything we do. So I guess I worry more about not releasing it than releasing it. From the standpoint of, what are we waiting for? Like, if we found something else out, then we would change the report, I suppose. Or we probably wouldn't change the report, the report would still stand.
But we would have to deal with whatever new information was.
Which is what we are, as I say, we're constantly, we just didn't, finish the report and then we're done. We're constantly, working with the SDS office as we see, ways to strengthen the program. And we would do with any district operations. I mean, even food service, once we finish there, if we see something that we think is going to improve the program, we share that with them, even if there's an odd going on or not. But I definitely appreciate and understand, the concern, but I also know, because this has been going on for a couple of months, and we are complete. I'm not sure, once again, what would change, by delaying the release another month.
Accepting the board members, I really don't, again, I don't have a view. Okay, I'm raising questions from and raising points. Okay? I think it's entirely up to the administration and to the Board of Education. And so, to be honest with you, whatever we're going to take now will stand from this. And that doesn't mean it's needed or whatever. Okay? I just really, I feel strongly after that.
What's the rest? Waiting. What's the rest?
I mean, do you stand behind the work?
Yes.
actually should have been withdrawn, although I withdrew it in my head, I didn't say it out loud. Let's consider that one withdrawn, and I'll make another motion to release the report. Did I make a motion just then? Am I allowed to make a motion? I called for a motion, but I will actually not call for a motion, and I'll make a motion to release the report. Is there a second?
There is.
Any other discussion about releasing the report? I guess we should probably do a roll call vote.
I guess I should comment. I guess I would have thought in certain cases like this would have been put on hold when the auditor came in. But since that's not what he did, because in normal cases, there's someone else coming in and they're over. I don't understand why this wasn't put on hold, okay? And so after, like you said, so I didn't understand the rush to release the report when you have it, but since it's there at this point, I guess you can't, but I never could understand why the rush to do the report when another body, and because it's an outside body, I don't view you as the outside body. That's an independent body, but one for the betterment of the internal auditor. And so I would have just held off, but since you didn't, this is where we find ourselves. But I think it could have been avoided way back then when they came, that this one should have been put on the shelf at that time, but since it was not, you find yourself that it was sitting here, and not to release it now in front of everyone would say, why not? So that's my 2 cents.
I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying, Ms. Russell, but because the investigation by the Auditor of State was looking at really focused on the vendors and the possible fraud that they did, this review went forward to provide the district recommendations and to look at how we are administering the program and to see if there were any recommendations that could be made that would benefit the program. So at that point in time, I still did not see the 2 audits as being competing or conflicting with each other, but I definitely, hindsight is 20/20, so I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Ms. Campbell, just weigh in?
Just one question, Mr. President. Carolyn, you're comfortable with your findings, and you're comfortable with the implementation that is going to take place moving forward with SES?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Questions? Mr. Davis?
I really must understand. Thank you.
Ms. Gross? Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Ms. Russell? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.